I used to think I loved the Beatles until I heard about Kolya Vasin. Only then did I see what loving the Beatles really means. For an essay competition a number of years ago, I wrote on how the Beatles' influence had ripped a small hole in the Iron Curtain and allowed young Soviets to partake in the largest fanaticism ever surrounding a pop music act. I lost the competition, but in my research process I came across Kolya Vasin, Russia's #1 Beatles fan. Over 2 years ago now, in just the third video I ever made for this channel, I adapted part of it into a video about the Beatles' influence in the USSR. But I was always struck by the strange story of this Soviet man who just loved the Beatles. Kolya campaigned for a series of off-the-wall Beatles tributes, such as petitioning the local government to rename his hometown of Leningrad to Lennongrad. When he died in 2018, he was working on perhaps his most ambitious project ever, the John Lennon Rock and Roll Temple. Envisioning a 200-foot shrine on the coast of the Gulf of Finland, Kolya wanted messages of peace and love broadcast across the shoreline and a full-sized yellow submarine floating on the edge of the Baltic. This was certainly his largest scale and most ambitious project, but perhaps what he is best known for is his collection of over 11,000 items of Beatles memorabilia. Today, it's preserved in the Kolya Vasin Beatles Museum in Russia's second city, St. Petersburg. I speak to Polly and Julia from the museum, the former working there full-time as its manager and the latter volunteering as a tour guide. Being the guide, Julia does most of the talking. The space is crammed with every conceivable kind of Beatles paraphernalia: LPs, books, paintings, toys, clothes, cassettes, and a truly astounding amount of sculptures. Kolya's job, beyond being a full-time self-described Beatlesologist, was as a ceramics artist, and there are ceramic models of guitars, basses, the band themselves, and mugs plastered with lyrics. It is a truly breathtaking amount of stuff. The armchair in which Kolya sits in the photograph showing now contains his portrait, a tribute to the man whose unbounding Beatlemania created this kaleidoscopic mass of collectibles. Julia's parents were friends with Kolya and fellow Beatles enthusiasts, so she grew up with him kind of being around. Her own name was taken from that of John Lennon's mother, Julia, also the title of a 1968 Beatles song.
So I sing the song of love, Julia.
I asked Julia what Kolya was like.
Well, it was really, it was adorable. It was a very big man, charming, absolutely. He was so much in love with what he was doing. The main thing that we have about the museum is the atmosphere that was once created by Kolya. Everywhere he lived, he would create this specific atmosphere, and when people would get here, they would love to stay here, to come back, to bring their friends here. He knew how to be happy. He was in love with the music. He dedicated himself to the things he loved. The main motto was always, all we need is love. All you need is love over here. It is still one of the symbols of the museum. And love is the main thing that we have in this life. And everything we do, everything we do without love is not worth seeing or not worth, well.
Julia shows me a number of books made by Kolya, all fairly bulky volumes, each chronicling a different year of the Beatles' career, all handmade by him. The pride of the collection is a huge tome entitled The Life of John Lennon, sticking out for its sheer size on a bookshelf already overflowing with massive handcrafted works. It looks a little tattered now, hence an ongoing digitising project, but it retains a great deal of its beauty. The spine of the book is adorned with a striking red heart, within it inscribed JL. It weighs 13 kilograms. I doubt even John Lennon knew that much about John Lennon. Of the four Beatles and assortment of surrounding characters, perhaps now obviously, John was Kolya's favourite. He was, as Julia put it, very much in love with John Lennon. Of course, the life of John Lennon should not have a happy ending. It's a story we all know, gunned down by a deranged fan, a life cut tragically short on that fateful day in December 1980. But Kolya did not live in reality. He lived in his own strange little magical mystery world. So in Kolya's Life of John Lennon, he was not really shot on the steps of his apartment.
Kolya didn't believe John Lennon passed away. He didn't want to hear anything about that, and was prohibited to mention that date or to talk about this here. His version was that John didn't die, he moved to some deserted islands in the south of Italy, and he stays there. Just he doesn't want to be a public person anymore. So that is how it was.
He didn't want to believe that John was gone, and so he didn't.
So I don't know what to say about Kolya, because it's, first of all, there's too much to say, and at the same time, I don't know what exactly to say. He was a pioneer. He was a very dedicated person. He was in love, and he wanted to share this love with the people around. He was organizing concerts dedicated to the Beatles' birthdays. Started in the 60s, and at that moment was not allowed to have these concerts in any concert halls, and we didn't have clubs at that time. But then in the 70s, it all started already to be brought into public. So some cafes would be rented to organize the concerts dedicated to John Lennon's birthday, to George Harrison's birthday, and so on. And since we have two Beatles members who were born in summer, for Paul's birthday and for Ringo Starr's birthday, they would go outside. They would go to to the Gulf of Finland, so to the banks of some lakes, have a barbecue there, play live music there. So the concerts are still held in St. Petersburg. We still have two big concerts dedicated to George and to John, and smaller concerts dedicated to other group members or to some particular events.
On the museum's website, a list of musicians that had visited the museum caught my eye. One name in particular, Boris Grebenshchikov, stood out. Grebenshchikov, the founding father of Russian rock and frontman and sole constant member of influential St. Petersburg outfit Aquarium, counted himself amongst Kolya's friends. Kolya, though not a musician himself, acted as something of an impresario for small acoustic concerts in his apartment and later in the Leningrad Rock Club. Grebenshchikov was involved in this scene and later would make it to the United States, with David Letterman calling him the first Soviet international rock star on his late night show. In our brief exchange, I asked Grebenshchikov about Kolya, to which he says, the Beatles were the air that he breathed.
Some photographs, and you can see young Boris Grebenshchikov. This is John Stingray, from the States, and she came here first in the beginning of the 80s, and she was a producer of the LP Red Wave. And that was an LP where four most popular and different different groups of Russia, four groups were taped. And that is how our music first got abroad. So they started to get invitations to have concerts, and Aquarium, Boris Grebenshchikov was one of the first who was invited to the States to play music there.
The Beatles themselves caught wind of Kolya's obsession from the other side of the Iron Curtain at various points throughout their individual careers. Kolya had wanted to wish John Lennon a happy 30th birthday in 1970, but he didn't know how to. No Soviet citizen had ever spoken to Lennon.
On the 9th of October 1970, when Kolya wanted to send a telegram to John Lennon and to say happy birthday to him. So he made a telegram. We will show you this is a copy of the telegram he wrote. He sent he couldn't know the address of John Lennon, of course, so he sent the telegram to the address of the Abbey Road studio, and there in this telegram, besides, he asked John to send his latest LP to him as a gift, signed by him and Yoko.
The last line of the telegram reads, "Your music is in my heart always and forever. Beatles forever. Little Walrus. Kolya Vasin." As a token of their appreciation, the couple sent a signed copy of John Lennon Plastic Ono Band in return. Kolya is believed to have been the only person from the Soviet Union ever to have correspondence with John Lennon. Though he never met John, Kolya did meet the other half of the songwriting partnership, Paul McCartney. On a tour of Russia in 2003, Paul and Kolya met in St. Petersburg's famous Menshikov Palace.
What I love most is that both are smiling, not just one of them, but Paul McCartney is also happy to see him. That was great. And then Paul said about Kolya, he said, great man. So Kolya was very much pleased by the way he was met by Paul. And Paul McCartney gave Kolya his the concerts. He had a concert in Moscow during that visit. So he gave Kolya free tickets to attend the concerts. So he went to Moscow for a concert. So Kolya followed him by train to attend the concert. And in 2004, Paul McCartney returned to St. Petersburg to have a concert on the Palace Square. And I have been to the concert at that time, and it was great.
The overriding impression of Kolya I get from Julia was one of a man who loved deeply and loved music deeply. He didn't even have a favourite Beatles song, it would simply depend upon his mood, though Julia remembers him singing All My Loving and I'm Only Sleeping especially often. You don't have to petition your government to rename your local town after a band to demonstrate how much you like them, but there was something so beautiful in hearing a man so profoundly captivated by the chords, melodies and rhythms of men who he otherwise had such little culturally in common with, and was so loved by others for it. I suppose that's what the Beatles were all about, as goes the last sentence the Beatles ever put to tape together. In the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like the video that I mentioned earlier about the Beatles in the USSR more generally. There'll be a link in the description. Please feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts. I always love hearing what you have to say about the music and people I talk about, and don't forget to subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you next time.